Okay, this is the kegerator that I installed when I bought the house. So one first thing to know is there's a light switch right up in there. Just a little cheap fluorescent light mounted and plugged in through the back. But it worked out rather nicely. A little history: bought the house in '06. This used to be a bookshelf that was built in, and the first thing I did within a month of living here is convert this into the kegerator / bar. It was a lot of work, and I'm pretty proud of it. That said, a few things to know about it is this was a built-in bookcase. You can even see where I took a box cutter and drew the line to kind of give the mahogany wood look. The paneling back here is fake. This is all faux. The casing is the original. The wood staining was dark enough so it all matched. The reason I bring that up is, you look close, you can see nail heads very tiny through. The reason I say all that is because be careful when you're back here. You have nails that have come through because it's very, very thin wood. And that's the back of the keg that runs down to where the kegerator is. So, where to begin? Operating. Let's just start off with a couple of parts. Obviously, you have your tap handles, which I'm not leaving. That is not part of the agreement, but for purposes, I want you to see why one's here. I am a nice guy, and I'll leave a basic tap handle here for you can operate, but you'll probably want to start your own collection. That said, these, I don't even know what you officially call them, the spouts, but you've got these pieces. They need to be cleaned. You've got your lines. These are fixated into the bar, and the lines run down. Let's work our way down in the basement to the actual kegerator. And then, I forgot the flashlight. To the kegerator. There's the pressure gauge valves. There's your CO2 tank. And then there's your lines that run right back up about 13 or 14 feet. I believe commercial lines at 50 feet and beyond required an insulated line with a glycol pump, but if you're 25 feet and under, you're not going to run into any problems. Which is why I never really had a problem operating this system. You just have to make sure your lines are sized right depending on what kind of beer you're running. Same with the pressure. If you look here at the gauges, it will give you an output of the pressure that you're currently on. That's 10 psi and so on. So let's start with a little bit about the kegerator. Built-in custom collar that allowed for those penetrations in there, and then the hatch comes off altogether. We're just going to leave it off for today's purpose. And then there's the system. You can put 3 kegs in here. That said, take a look around. We have 2 5-gallon kegs and 1 7-gallon bowling ball keg. There is the device that basically makes this a kegerator. So the way the system works is this is actually a freezer, as you probably noticed, and there's a controller on the back of the unit. The panel has come off. This is what the panel looks like. It's upside down. So let's find that panel, just so you understand how this thing works. There's your power. Keep that plugged in. Runs all the way back. Somewhere over there you'll follow it. Also, I believe powers up the sprinkler system. Keep that in mind. Back here, where's it at? It's right there. If you look carefully at this device here, I'm just going to pull it out. I need to see how this works. That's close enough. It's mounted to the back, but there's a dial. The dial right here rotates. You can see there's this little thing tells you what temperature the kegerator's set to. Lord, let's do it right. And we're back. Okay, so that says it's probably about 30 degrees, whatever it is. Be careful, that plate's off, so you don't want to get a little shock there if you touch that part. Just the dial, it rotates around. Very simple. Just move it to how you want it, and it will tell you what temperature you're operating at. So that's how you regulate this from not being a freezer. That's essentially what makes this device a kegerator and not a freezer. That said, how does it work? There's a bulb at the end of this wire, so that wire runs back to that meter. Follow it down. I keep it in a bottle of water. The battery in the thermometer is dead, and it already looks like we've got some icing up, which is not good, actually. So I cleaned this out today. Put a little bit of water in here to keep the mold down. That said, a little more moisture gets in here. It's frozen that. It's not really a problem. What you need to know is how it works. So the bulb in here, you can see it, is the temperature sensor. And this, once you replace the battery, will tell you the temperature of the water. You want it to stay water. It's frozen right now, so that little dial back there needs to be dialed down or up. If it was about 30 degrees or 35, whatever it was, obviously that's going to freeze. It's going to keep this unit running at that temperature. The whole point of this system is to cut the unit, the compressor, on and off to hold the temperature that you pick on the dial in the back that I showed you right there. So if it's on 30, guess what? This is supposed to be at 30 degrees. The second it hits 30 degrees, it turns off and warms up. I believe it's got a 2-degree delta, so once it hits 32 degrees, it cuts back on, and then it'll go back to 30 degrees. So currently, right now, it's too low. Now, is it really too low? The answer is no. What ends up happening is, if you look here, there's a lip and some bricks in there to support this, but you've got a ledge because this is where your compressor's at. That said, the cooling coil for this is all around here, around this side. Point being is, in this corner is the absolute coldest part of the freezer, which is why it's important to keep that there. Because whatever temperature, the lowest you get that at, which I guess you would want 33 degrees, would be the temperature of the beer in the bottom of these two kegs, 33 degrees. Because this I keep up top. and it usually stays about 35 to 45 degrees. What happens here is it's not a completely closed system. It's going to be a lot colder in the bottom than it is in the top. Thus, the point is, when you have a lot of beer in here, the temperature is going to be different. The output temperature, about the coldest I could actually get the beer at, was probably 38 degrees. You're going to see more in like the low 40s. Not that that's a problem, it's still cold beer, but you'd probably want to serve it at 35 if you could ever get it there. What you'll find out is when you put in 3 full kegs of beer, it takes a while to chill that beer. And even then, that compressor is fluctuating a lot to maintain the temperature that you've set it at back over here. So basically what you'll find out is if you put 1 5-gallon in here and decide to leave the other 2 empty, you'll need to adjust that every time. These are currently all empty. So when I cleaned it out today, since there's no volume in here to try to keep this stuff getting cold, it froze there. So what you do when you get this and take it over is you're going to crank that thing down, you know, see what temperature it's at, play around with it, put your kegs in here. But I want to say you want to keep this around, I don't know, 35, 30 degrees, depends on the water in here. But I'm going to go in and adjust it for you and turn it up a little bit. So I moved up a little bit so it will thaw out. That said though, that's how you regulate the temperature of the kegerator system. I'll leave this one here, that little thermometer at the top. I'll leave this here. It's all part of the system. You'll need a new battery for that, but it's very important to keep that little Gatorade bottle there. You want that bulb at the temperature that compressor is going to cut on and cut off at. Okay, next up. That's how you operate and maintain your temperature for this system. When you get new beer and you put it in here, my advice is when you pick it up at the store, you drag it down to the basement and you carefully get it in place. Do not tap the beer. Do not tap it as shown here. Let it sit just like that for about 24 hours. If you tap it right away, you're going to get nothing but head. I don't care how slow you drive home or careful, just let it sit at rest. And when you tap it, the longer you wait after you tap it, meaning up to a day, the better pour you're going to get. So the more proactive you are, if you're going to have a party Saturday night, buy your beer Thursday, tap it Friday, you should be good to go with pretty good pours. The more patient you are, the better it works. It is a delicate system. However, it'll still work if you need to fire it up that night and the same day you drive home. All beer operates at a different pressure. I kind of started playing around with which ones operate what pressures and just started writing them on here. But you know, even then it changes a little bit. The WK is wine coupe because these are all wine coupe kegs. They gave me a good deal and I just started keeping their beer only. So, more about the system. This, as I mentioned earlier, let's move some more things around. That's your CO2 tank. That's a couple hundred, I don't know, maybe $200. There's your CO2 meter. That's pretty self-explanatory. When you need to order gas, it's in the red. That's the pressure that it's set at. That really doesn't mean anything because you have pressure regulators, which are the 3 each for each tap. To adjust them, simply get a screwdriver and turn it right and turn it left, and as you do that, you'll see the needle move. You should never be outside lower than 8 and higher than 20. Typically your sweet spot's going to be about 10 to 14. Maybe you can get up to 16. I've had 1 or 2 beers that I've had up at 20. That's really high. and usually the beer's already flat in the keg at that point. It's old, because you're using a lot of CO2 to push it up. Sweet spot's typically 10 to 12. So early on when I got it, I was actually getting a lot of head at those pressures, because I figured out my lines were too narrow. So let's talk a little bit about this. This three-way valve system pressure regulator was pretty unique. Found it on eBay. I've never seen another three-way one. Just don't see them. You see two of them, and you'll see singles. So dual and single, you won't see a three-way. That said, hang on to it. This actually broke at one point, had a lot of leaks. Ended up getting one of my mechanical buddies to come and do a little brazing to get the pipes to make sure we weren't leaking, so I could keep it and not have to replace it with a dual. It's nice to have a three-tap system. If it ever does break, beer stores now might have a three-way, or you could maybe find one on eBay again like I did when I got lucky. But if not, you could always just reduce it down to a two-way. That said, I've labeled these so you know. There's the middle. Where did I label these other ones? Right. Left. Middle, left, right. Yeah, I know. You would think you'd do left, right, middle and it'd match up. It doesn't. The first one's the middle tap. Just note that when you're adjusting it, just match it up. It is written on each one, and I have to remind myself every time. Okay, so turn the CO2 on and off right here. Pretty self-explanatory. If you look, when you need to take this in because you're out of CO2, pretty full. If there's not a leak in your system, you'll get months out of this. To fill up CO2 probably can cost you anywhere from 25 to 100 bucks. I happen to work for a company and it only cost me $8 because we have our own CO2 tanks. That said, come to my company, which is Low Miller and Company at 48th and Pecos. Ask for me, I'll probably run you 25 to 50 bucks. Not more than that, which is what a lot of other places will charge. You're never really going to play with this. It just turns it on and off. But what you're going to do is you're going to shut this off, and then you'll get your Allen wrench and remove this so you can haul it off. And then you'll hook it back up the same way. Very easy. You don't ever need to play with this. These pressure regulators on here and these valves, that's a bleed valve. There's no point in fooling with them because you have this. That's why we built it this way. That's your CO2 line, and then it goes into your keg lines. Okay. Let's see. Let's start back up at the top a little bit. Based on the size of the lines you get, will determine how much head you get when you're pouring a beer. So I used to run really narrow lines, which is why I had those higher pressures down there, and I would get a lot of head beer, and it wasn't very good. And then I had some buddies who were in the industry, and they told me to get fatter lines. So right now, on the left in the middle, we have a 3/16 ID. On this far right one, we have a 1/4 inch ID. Reason being is for wheat beers I found that I would get a lot of head with the narrower IDs. So it was recommended that I do a 1/4 inch. I'll tell you right now, it's been about 2 years since I used my kegerator system. I'll explain why in a minute. That said, this line, the left, and then the right, so the left and right are clean. This is new lines. There's never been any beer run through them. This one I filled up 2 years ago, and look, it's see how it's a little foggy? needs to be cleaned out. We're going to do that today. Better yet, it actually needs to be replaced. And you're going to do that, but I'm going to teach you how to clean it so you can replace it and then clean it one day yourself, rather than me just leave it all fresh for you. The reason I no longer use this is because I can't drink it fast enough. That system holds 18 gallons, and even if I'm only operating one, that's a 5-gallon tank. Beer lasts about 3 months on a kegerator system. So as long as you can drink your beer in 3 months, it'll always stay fresh, it won't go flat. It's really not much of a problem when you're single or single with a roommate. Once I got married and had a child, I couldn't drink as much because friends wouldn't come over to help me and yada yada. I just started finding out that, drinking 5 gallons in 3 months is doable, but it's not the best idea. The other reason being is because when you pour one beer, your first beer or second beer, it's pretty much head. You empty out what's in the lines, and then you're shooting a bunch of CO2 up there. So what you're getting is a pretty foamy beer. You're probably going to pour out 1 full beer to 2 full beers on your first pour to get a full beer that's cold with no head. So if you have 1 or 2 a night, you're wasting about as much beer as you're pouring. But when you have some buddies over, you're going to have 2 to plus beers a night in a row, pretty close, pouring one after another. It makes a lot of sense because you're not going to waste near as much, and you're always pouring cold beer. So it's more about the consistency of using it on a night that makes it functional for social events, and I had a lot of poker nights, and really good for that. No problem to go through 18 gallons in 3 months when you have buddies come over. But if you're doing it by yourself, pouring 1 or 2 a night, I recommend just keeping some in the fridge, not using your system. So that's exactly what happened. One of the last times I used it, bought 5 gallons, didn't even finish it, and what's there has been sitting in the lines, not cleaned. Cleaning it, I would recommend that you clean this. Well, I guess every time you change it out, you should clean it. But if you can drink 18 gallons of beer every 3 months, and you're putting beer right back on it, those lines won't get that dirty because you're piping so much beer through it. You could probably just clean it twice a year. If you're not doing that, you ought to clean it every change out you do. This is the beer cleaning system. I will be leaving it for you as well. It's part of the kegerator system to make it work. So what I said here was this line is brand new. Eventually when your lines get so old you don't even want to clean them. You want to go to a beer shop and you want to buy new clean lines. I'll be leaving this extra here behind. This should be at least one of these covered one run. Keep in mind, remember, this is a bigger ID, so you'll want to put a HiveWise and see how it works. I never got to test it. But right here you've got a clean line, here you've got a clean line, here you've got a dirty line from whatever beer was on it. It wasn't Fat Tire because I no longer drink shit beer. What we're going to do is I'm going to clean this line, show you how to clean it so you know what to do and rehook it back up. But you need to replace it. You've got your hose here. Replacing it is cake. All you do is shut the system off from the kegs, which we're going to go through, and then you remove the braid and put a new line through, and then tie it on, clamp it good. Remember, you really want to get this all the way over. Focus. Come on. Get the line all the way on the nozzle. Clamp it good. That's the end of the nozzle. Get it all the way on. It's a little hard. You got to force it, but when you start shooting pressure on there, you don't want it to fly off, because if this does, beer's just going to pour out and flood your basement or wherever. So clamp it on good, but you'll need to replace that middle line. We'll clean it for you. Let's go back to the basement. Okay, talk a little bit more about the keg system. 18 gallons to 5, 7.5, I might have mentioned that. I'm going to take these out, but I did show you how they're spaced. It's a tight system, but you're gonna have to, you can fit them in there. Unfortunately, you will never be able to fit a normal size keg, which I believe is truly called a pony keg, but for all your frat parties and things like that from movies, those are actually pony kegs, not quarter kegs. You can't do a half keg. You can only do 2 5s in this keg. You can't fit the others. They just won't. Unless you want to buy a new freezer and hook up some new stuff, have at it. That said, I'm going to leave this keg because I'm such a nice guy. Kegs are on your own. They, you know, you've probably bought a keg before, but you basically pay a down deposit on the shell until you return it. Well, when you have a kegerator system, you're basically renting 3 shells until you sell your home and go back to the place and get your deposit back. But I think you need to keep this one. You will not find a bowling ball size keg anywhere. Wine Coop had this one. It just worked out to fit in here just barely. And that said, because it's a Wine Coop keg shell, the only place you're going to be able to go and exchange that at is Wine Coop. So I would recommend whatever beers you like, let them be the 5 gallons, and suck it up and get something from Wine Coop, whether you like it or don't. But when you do bring this back to Wine Coop, tell them you have to have the same keg back, that it fits your system. And if you find another shell somewhere or another place to exchange it for that same size, you're good to go. You can give it up, but you won't get another one to fit in here. So it's kind of important that you keep that 7.5 system. Ugh. Yeah, that line's gross. But we're going to flush it. All right, let's start that. I'm going to get these shells out. Stay with me for just a minute. Okay, we've got here the hoses clamp onto your beer. So like I said, these were clean when I used them last. These were clean before I even put beer on them. You may want to clean them again. This whole thing had enough moisture, a little bit of mold grew. I cleaned it out. I would advise you clean this guy, the left and the right, just the clamps. The same way I'm going to show you how to clean a clamp. The lines are fine, you don't need to mess with them. Okay, just wrap that around here. Okay. Since the system's closed off at the top, remember that. Make sure when you put this on or take it off that your tap handle's in the closed position. Even when your keg's empty and no beer's coming out, just make sure it's closed before you do this. Now you do it. See how that pulls up, slides up? Once it slides up, you can lift this up. So handle slides, this is loose. Once it's loose, you can twist it off. There you go. So take a look here closely. You see the grooves? The grooves go in, and then you can turn it over. Let's reattach it, just so you see what I'm talking about. Grooves in, now it goes over. See? If you don't have the grooves lined up, can't get it on. Once it's in, twist it good and tight. I mean tight. You'll know it. You can't go any further. Then Pull the handle up, pull it down, hear that sound? That's CO2, because this is empty, from this tank shooting up and filling the line. If you have that open up there, oh, see, look, you can even see it moving up the line. That is a gross piece of mold or something. Yeah, it's what's left in the beer trying to shoot up. So I'm just draining CO2 right now. Normally that would be beer. Alright, now we can remove that. That's what we'll clean. That said, it looks a little gunky in there too. But these are all empty. You just need to take that back to water coop. These can slide through a little bit. There's a little give, so you can throw them over. I have plenty of room to remove this. Hold on. My point earlier, made a little stand in here with some bricks to level out that bowling ball keg. That's the compressor housing, back what I was talking about earlier. The coil runs all alongside here. Therefore, this is the coldest part and will be the first part to ice up, which is why that's hard as a brick right now. It'll probably melt by the time you get that home. Probably melt by tomorrow morning, actually. Here's your little funky bowling ball 7.5 ton keg. It's yeah, really short and fat compared to the other ones, but 7.5 gallons, so yeah, you can hold 18 gallons on here. Okay, just thinking if there's any other tips you might want to know before I start teaching you how to clean. Oh, here's one. The drain. There's no drain in this basement. There's no floor drain. So when your beer runs down, I had to create something to drain it. There's your drain, your 3 supplies, your drain. Nothing more than a tube. You'll see in here